who's ready to finally do a crochet along together? I have this cute, adorable, amazing alien robot pattern, and today we are going to crochet one together. But yes, if you have not seen my alien robot pattern, this is it. It can be made in a number of different sizes. This I double-stranded basic acrylic yarn and some Bernat velvet. There is a modification in the written version of this pattern, and you can make your own little friendly cartoon robot, but there is modification in the written format. If you decide to purchase the pattern, you can make this guy, and he was made using blanket yarn, Bernat blanket. And for the sake of trying to keep it simple and easy, we are going to make a little guy today using just basic general 4-weight yarn. But this is what we're doing. Who's ready? I'm ready. I'm excited. And yes, like I said, if you want to, you can find the link in my description to grab yourself the digital PDF file and follow along that way. Or if you just don't want to watch the video and want to make the thing, there is a full written PDF format available on my website. Again, link is in the description. But yeah, so I'm working directly off of my own personal pattern, and that's what we're doing. You will need quite a few things. For starters, you will need yarn. For the sake of this tutorial, I am using Red Heart Super Saver. It's just the general acrylic worsted 4-weight yarn that you will find everywhere. My personal go-to when it comes to making animals with this yarn is a 3.5mm hook. You will also need a pair of scissors, a stitch marker, a darning needle, stuffing, a stuffing stick, I guess you can call it. And then I do like using safety eyes, and so I'm going with a pair of 18mm trapezoid sink-in safety eyes. And that's all she wrote, folks. So we're just gonna put these eyes off to this, all this stuff off to the side. I don't need any of this right now. I need my stitch marker, my hook, and my yarn. All right, here we go. To get started, you're gonna need a slip stitch, or a slip knot, sorry. You will need to start with a slip knot, and boom. And off we go. Now I use my foundation ring. If you don't know what this is, go ahead and go back and watch that video, or you can use a magic ring as well. The magic ring and I are not friends, so I don't use it. But to get started, you want to have a foundation ring or a magic ring of 6 single crochet stitches. 4, 5. And then just a personal thing that I do is before I close off that 6th single crochet, I pull my tail down so I can tuck it and use it and crochet around it as we go. There we have finished round 1. Now to continue on your next round, you are going to do 6 half double crochet increases. So you are going to half double crochet increase into all 6 stitches. So that is 2 half doubles into the same stitch all the way around. And as you can see, as I'm going around, I am crocheting that tail in, so there's no way it's gonna come undone. And then my last two. 11 and 12. So by the time you make it to the end of your second round, you should now have 12 half double crochets. Now for the third round, you are going to be working into that rear third loop to begin to get that flat bottom effect for your robot. So into the rear third loop, you are going to single crochet around the next 12 stitches. 2, 3, 7, 8. Oops. There we go. 9. Now, if you want to, I usually just like keep pushing it out of my way, but once you have this tail pretty much closed off, you can cut it if you want to, if it, makes you crazy, but I usually just leave mine and tuck it inside when we get to the stuffing point. Oops. Then, and our last one, 12. So now for the next few rows, so for rounds 4 through 8, you are going to be single crocheting around in each stitch. So for the next 5 rounds, you are just single crocheting into each stitch. So 5 rounds of 12 single crochets. I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and I will catch you at the end. Now, I've already lost count, so just a quick how to make sure you're counting properly or you have the right amount of rows. I know that this most bottom round here was the rear third loop single crochet. So the next rounds are the solid rounds that we're just going around in circles. So I know that this was round 3. So this is 4, 5, 6, 7. So I need one more round of single crochet to get to that 8th round completed. And 12. Okay. So we are now done with rounds 1 through 8. For the next round 9, you are going to decrease all the way around. So you should have 6 decreases, and that's single crocheting 2 together all the way around until you go until you have 6 stitches remaining at the end. So it's 2 decreases. Now on to rounds 10 and 11, you are going to single crochet into each stitch all the way around. So you are doing 2 rounds with 6 stitches each. So 10 and 11 are 6 stitches around. Alright, so we are through round 11, and basically at this point we have now actually finished his itty bitty body and his neck. So now we're going to start making his head. So on to round 12, you are going to increase 6 times. So you're going to place 2 single crochets into each stitch all the way around. So by the end, you should have 12 stitches around total. Okay. Now for round 13, you are going to repeat 6 times, single crochet, and then an increase. So, and like I said, you're going to repeat that pattern 6 times. So it's single crochet in the first stitch, increase into the next, and you're going to repeat that until you reach the end of your round. And when you reach the end, you should have 18 stitches. On to the next round, round 14, you are going to single crochet into each stitch all the way around. So you should still have 18 stitches remaining when you make it to the end of your round. Okay. On to round 15. You are going to single crochet into the first stitch and then increase in the next stitch. And now for 5 repeats, you are going to single crochet in the next 2 stitches and then increase. So that's 1 repeat. And again, that's single crochet 2, and then increase. So you're going to repeat that 3 more times. 1, 2, increase. 1, 2, increase. 1, 2, increase, and then that very last stitch of the round, you're going to place a single crochet, and you should now have 24 stitches total all the way around. For rounds 16, 17, and 18, so for the next 3 rounds, you're going to be single crocheting all the way around 24 stitches for 3 rounds total. So another helpful tip or trick when it comes to keeping track of how many rows you've done or how many you need to do or anything like that. I know I needed to do 3 total rounds, or 3, yeah, of the 24 single crochets a round. I have 2 here, but if I were needing to count how many I've had done, I know the row before I started the solid rows had an increase in it, and you can see that increase because it's a little bit wider, bigger, and right here. So I know that that is the previous row before I started my solid rounds. So from here, this is like, so I know I needed 3, but I have 1, 2, so I need to do 1 more around. This comes in handy, like it's a nifty little thing to look for when working on much larger projects that have like 10 to 15 or more solid single crochet around rows. And it also works with decreases as well when you need to, a decrease is just another nice stitch to look for as like a clue or a sign on, you know, what row you were at or how many you need and whatnot. I don't know. That's just a little thing that I do. It helps me. It might help you. If it doesn't, I tried. But we are almost done with this 3rd single crochet around. Okay. And 24. So we have now made it all the way through round 18. We're going to stop here for a second before we keep going on the head, and we're going to stuff the body. So this is where your wonderful fiberfill stuffing comes in. I usually use a little bit at a time. I don't want to overstuff, but I do like having the right shape. So I'm just going to take a little bit, and this hole is rather tight because we are working so small. And to make sure that we keep this bottom as flat as possible, I like to stuff my robots against a flat base. So I'm just use my little stuffing stick, and we're just gonna slowly stuff his body. Like I said, you don't want it to be too tight that it's bulging or you're seeing your stuffing through your stitches, but you know, you want it to be enough that he's holding his shape. So we got the first little bit in there. I'm just gonna take this another little chunk, and we're gonna, whoops, keep on stuffing him in there. And there we go. We got a nice little shape. Now I'm just gonna grab a little bit more just to try and just get a little bit more into this. I know it's a very small area, but I want his neck to be a little bit more sturdy than it is. So I'm just gonna take a little bit more, and I'm not really like pushing it down into his body. I'm just kind of pinching off where it will go into his body, and I'm just stuffing it into his neck a little bit. Hopefully you can see, it's not like fully down there, but it just gives a little bit more, like you see, it's not really wobbly anymore. Just gives a little bit more structure and strength to his neck. There we go, we've got a stuffed robot body. And like I said, by stuffing it against a flat surface, we kept that nice flat area there. But let's get back to working on his head and get him on the road to being finished. So we left off at round 18. So now we're gonna do round 19, which is a repeat of 6 times of single crochet 3 So 1, 2, 3, sorry about the squeaky, and then increase. And you're going to repeat that 5 more times for a total of 6 repeats. So it's single crochet 3, 2, 3, and then increase. So repeat that another 4 more times and I will catch you at the end. Alrighty, and again for the next 3 rounds, you are single crocheting into each stitch all the way around. And after that last round of increases, you should currently have 30 stitches total all the way around. So for the next 3 rounds, 20, 21, and 22, you're just going to be single crocheting into each stitch all the way around. So I know that round 18 was my last increase, or 19 was my last increase. So we got 20, 21, 22. For round 23, we are half double crocheting into each stitch around. So by the time you make it to the end, you should have 30 half double crochet stitches. Again, we're going to take a little deviation. Put my stitch marker back in. Now is where you are going to need your safety eyes. So I'm going to decide, just because it's easier on life, since my stitch marker is back here, I'm going to put the eyes on this side. Now in the pattern it says you want to attach your eyes around between rounds 19 and 20, roughly 4 to 5 stitches apart, visible stitches apart. Now you can use the little trick that I tried to tell you or explained, but we're going to do it backwards. So we know that the last round that we just did was 23. So this would make 22, 21, 20, 19. So it means you're going to want to put your safety eyes, not your stitch marker, your safety eyes right here between rounds 19 and 20. Now I like to use my hook and kind of open up that hole a little bit, just because it makes putting the safety eyes in a little bit easier. If you want to, you can even take that stuffing stick and just put that in there just to open up those stitches a little bit, because the post on these safety eyes, it's a little thick. Now I use my own safety eyes. I call them my peekaboo safety eyes. So there is actually like a cute little decal on there. So give me a minute while I make sure that I'm putting these on the correct way. He's gonna have little stars on his eyes. And you're gonna have to play with it, especially because, I mean, I crochet very tightly, so sometimes it is not my friend and doesn't fully, it fights me. It doesn't want to go on. So I'm just gonna stretch this yarn a bit to really try and get these eyes in there. That's not the one I want. That's the one I want. So let's try that again. Oh, come on. The struggles of a crochet artist. Okay, I got one. Now these are sink in eyes, so I'm gonna count an extra couple of stitches, but because when this sinks in, it's gonna like cover a little bit. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and we'll do 5. So we said roughly 4 to 5 visible stitches. So we're gonna do that, and now I'm gonna count over an extra 2 spaces just to give myself that extra gap or space, because the safety eyes actually cover, you know, a small area. So we're gonna open up this area a bit, stretch it out a little bit. This is why when it comes to the safety eyes that you choose, you want to make sure that you are using a size of safety eyes that works with your yarn. I do like, with my robots, I do like using a larger pair of eyes. Like, I love the oversized eye look as well, but for sake of showing you guys and trying to get you on the same page and everything, I went with 18 millimeter this time. And obviously, as you can see, it's still a bit of a struggle. So we're gonna throw these in here. There we go. Why was this side easier than the other side? Maybe not. There we go. Okay. And now for me, just because of the eyes that I am using, I'm just gonna make sure that these stars are sitting roughly in the same position before I put the backs on. We don't want any crooked eyeballs. All right. So because these eyes are a little bit smaller, the space is a bit more, but I still think it's cute. Now I've got this cute little blocking board that a friend of mine put together for me. So I'm gonna take my back, throw it on there, and hopefully I'm not gonna break my hand. I honestly am very awful at putting these eyes on. I don't normally use this method. Usually the method that I use, I usually put these on my floor, and I will use a rubber mallet and my husband's 10 millimeter socket. Okay, so that was way more of a struggle than I wanted it to be. Spacing's a little off, but it is what it is. We can fix that later and I will show you how, but we've got our safety eyes in. Now we are going to finish up his head. And we left off on round 23. So moving on to round 24, we are going to be decreasing, and we're also working into that rear third loop again. So what you're going to do is we are single crocheting 3 and then decreasing. This squeak is driving me crazy. And then decrease. And I just loop around both of those and decrease. And you're going to repeat that 5 more times. Now you should have 24 stitches around at the end of round 24. For the next round, we are decreasing again, and that is going to be done with a single crochet and then decrease. And then for the next, you're going to repeat 5 times. You're going to single crochet 2, 1, 2, and then decrease. So you repeat that 4 more times. Decrease. I just made myself confused. Ha! Decrease, and then into that last stitch, you're gonna place a single crochet. And you should now have 18 stitches around. Now, before we do the next row, go ahead and again grab some stuffing and go ahead and start stuffing his head. Make sure you get under the backing of your safety eyes. And again, you don't want to overstuff because we do want to try and keep his head flat, but it might stick up a little bit and that's okay. But go ahead, get the stuffing in there. Make sure you've got the edges are nice and clean and rounded as they should be. I said you want to have a cute curved edge to him. It's important to make sure it's nice and curved around this part here is where a lot of the weird wonkiness comes in from our increasing rounds. Oops, too much stuffing. Like I said, I personally use a little bit of stuffing at a time. It gives me better control and direction on where my stuffing is going. And it helps to avoid big, bulky spots, bulging spots, any imperfections. If you need to, you can grab a stuffing stick like I'm doing here to really get the stuffing up in here between the backs of those safety eyes. Like I said, you want a nice, clean, even looking head. But you don't want too much that you're bulging and stretching your stitches. Like I said, you do not want to see your stuffing poking out through your stitches. You want it to stay nice and tight and clean. So I'm gonna stop here. It's got a decent amount. We'll finish stuffing before we close off his head completely. Excuse me. Before we close his head completely. And we got one more round to do before we completely finished with before we are completely finished with his body and head piece. And that is round 26, and you are going to single crochet and then decrease 6 times. Now from here, this is where I usually finish off my work, and to do that, I'm just going to slip stitch into the next stitch, and then I'm just going to yarn over and pull that loop through. I'm going to give myself a little bit of a tail so we can close the top of his head. And take my scissors, snip that off. I'm just going to finish pulling that through so it gives me a nice little knot here. Now, if you feel like there's a little bit of a blank space here, you can kind of see it pushes in a little bit. So I'm just gonna, again, take a little bit of stuffing, and at this point, because the hole is so small my fingers won't fit, I'm just gonna use this stuffing stick to fill in any of these edges around the top. And I'm trying not to pull up in this section, like I'm pushing this out into this edge that we created with that rear third loop, because we want the head to stay as flat as we can possibly get it. And ignore all these loose fibers. I honestly got, in my opinion, a bad batch of stuffing. It's making me crazy, but yes, please ignore all the weird white fuzzies. But yes, so we're just gonna carefully just go around this outer edge just to make it nice and crisp and even without getting too crazy. Just like that. I can push on him. He's pretty good. Seems pretty rounded to me. Brush off these fuzzies because they're driving me crazy. And now from here, you're gonna take your darning needle. I've just got this itty bitty one. I don't need anything too crazy because we're working with some pretty small yarn. And I am going to close off the top of his head. Now there are different ways to do this. However, this is the way that I do it. And I go back and forth through those front loops. So I just weave back and forth like this through each of those open front loops from the last round that we just did. Fuzzies. Ugh. And then once you've made it all the way around and back to that knot, I want you to slowly just pull on that yarn tail. And as you can see, while I'm pulling, it closes that gap to a nice tight closure. Now, I like to loop once I've got it nice and tight. I will just pick a stitch on that outer edge, and I will loop it around and come back out through that center just to kind of lock this in place. So I don't have to worry about it loosening at all. And now I'm just gonna pick one of these edge loops and I'm going to tie a knot. So we know his head is definitely not gonna come undone. And then for good measure, I'm just gonna stick this yarn tail back through the center. I'm just gonna poke it out in some random spot, pull that down. You can see His head is nice and flat. Our yarn tail came out the back of his head here. So I'm just gonna wrap it up into the stitch right above it and come back down a little bit, out the bottom some more. Just like weaving in our tail a little bit just to give it some extra security. And then again, I'm just gonna go through the stitch below and pull it back out the top somewhere, wherever my needle comes out. There we go. You don't want to pull too tight because it will pull your stitches in. You just want it to just be secure enough that you are comfortable. And once you feel like you've weaved enough, you are welcome to just all the way down, snip that clean off. And at this point, we have a finished robot head and body, all as one piece. And I will show you at the end how to bring these eyes a little closer together. So from here, now that we have this part done, we need to give him some legs, some hands and arms, and his antenna at the end. So to continue on, we are going to make his hands. Now, his hands do use two different techniques. They start by being worked in rows, but you will finish by working in rounds. So to start, you are going to need a single foundation crochet, just one single crochet. And there we go. We have one single crochet foundation. Now, until otherwise stated, you are going to chain one and turn. The chain one does not count as a stitch in this regard, but yes, because for the first few parts, we are working back and forth in rows. So I've done my chain one and I've turned. So for row 2, you're going to increase into that stitch. Now I myself, because I'm working in rows like this and I use a foundation, I'm going, before I finish this second increase, I bring my tail around and then I finish my stitch. And then I bring the tail back over and then I do my chain one. I pull on it a little bit just to make sure it's nice and even. So now when I turn my work, my yarn tail is in line with the row that I'm about to do, so I can crochet over it. So for row 3, you are simply just single crocheting in the next 2 stitches. So we have 1, and then, oops, I didn't go through both loops. And 2. Now you're going to chain and turn again, and you are going to increase in both of these 2 stitches. So that's increase 1, increase 2. So now I have 4 stitches across. And this little tail, I'm just going to give it a little tug just to make sure everything's nice and neat. And I'm actually going to snip it off right at the edge because it's not needed anymore. Now from here is where we are going to start working in rounds. For somebody new, it might be a little difficult. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place a stitch marker into that last stitch that we just made working in rows. And what I want you to do, it might be a little bit tight and that's fine, but you're basically going to curve this top part around and you are going to single crochet into all 4 of those stitches. Now for my first stitch, I usually tend to have to use the tip of my hook to kind of like scoop into that first stitch sometimes, depending on how tight it is. If it is too tight for you, you can chain 1 and then do the single crochets. Just make sure that when you are continuing in your rounds, you are not crocheting into that chain. It's simply just to make it a little bit easier for you to get to that corner. But there we go. So we've got 1, like I said, it's going to be tight, 2, 3, and then where we put that stitch marker, 4. So that was round 5. Now for the next 4 rounds, you are going to single crochet into each stitch all the way around. So for rounds 6 through 9, you are single crocheting in each stitch around. Now for round 10 of his arm now, you are going to increase in all 4 stitches. So you should have 8 stitches by the end of your round. Now, the last round for his arms is you are going to single crochet into each stitch around. So single crochet for the next 8 stitches. Now, you are going to finish off, so insert your hook into the next stitch, slip stitch, and then yarn over, and you want to leave a longer tail for this part because you will be attaching this to the body. Now, to fully finish off the rest of his arm, I want you to take your darning needle again, and just like on the head, go ahead and weave through those front loops, and you're gonna pull it tight to close. And this is gonna give you that like ball looking shoulder that we want for our robot. And when you're done with that, go ahead and set that off to the side and repeat all of that one more time to make your second arm, and then we will continue on to making his legs. So like I said, just pull that nice and tight. Now you can knot this off. I personally, because we're using it to attach to the side of a robot, I'm just gonna put my needle through the center. I'm gonna pull it out the side of this ball here, and I'm just gonna tug that closure down just a little bit, and you can see it gives this nice rounded look to it. And I'm just gonna leave it like this for now until we're ready to put this guide together. So go ahead and go back, repeat all of that one more time to make your second arm. And I'm gonna go ahead and begin his legs. All right, so we are almost at the finish line. Now we move on to making his legs. So as always, you are going to start with a slip knot. And now this is going to start a little bit different. Instead of a single crochet foundation ring, I want you to do a half double crochet foundation ring. So the only difference being is you will yarn over before inserting your hook into that chain stitch, and then pull through one loop and then pull through all 3 loops. Now you're going to do 5 more half double crochets into the bottom of that foundation to get your first round of 6 half double crochet stitches in a ring. 1, 2, 3. 4, 5, and again, I like to tuck my tail. 6. Now, because this is so tight, I will not be using a stitch marker. I will instead will just be counting my stitches. But if you need a stitch marker, by all means, go ahead and use one. Now, for round 2 of our legs, in the rear 3rd loop, so that inside loop from doing the half double crochets, you are going to single crochet into each stitch around. So by the time you make to the end, you should have 6 single crochet stitches in the round. And then just make sure that your leg is facing the right way. You got the flat edge here, and continue on to round 3. For round 3, you are going to single crochet 4 and then decrease, leaving you with 5 stitches. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and then our decrease. Okay, and then this tail is honestly a little bit in my way, so this one I am going to snip off. And then for the last round of our legs, we are going to single crochet 3 and then decrease, leaving us with 4 stitches at the end. So we've got 1, 2, 3, and then our decrease. And that's it for the legs, so you can go ahead and slip stitch into the next stitch and then pull up a loop. Make sure you leave a decent size yarn tail for attaching the leg. Now, this is a personal preference. It is up to you. If you are using a thicker yarn, you will need to stuff the leg. But being that we are working so small, I'm just gonna grab the tiniest bit of stuffing and use my stuffing stick just to give this leg a little bit of shape to it. But honestly, you could probably get away without stuffing it. It doesn't need a whole lot because it is such a small little area, but I like to do it just because I like to do it. I don't know. I don't really have a reason. I just do. But there we go. We have a leg. So all you got to do is go back and repeat those steps one more time and to complete your second leg. Set those aside. We will put him together when we are done. We've got one more piece that we need to make, and that is his antenna. So go ahead and grab your yarn again, make your slip knot, and make a foundation ring of 4 single crochets. So we've got 1, 2, 3, and 4. And for the next 4 rounds, yes, I need to edit my pattern for that, but for the next 4 rounds, you are going to single crochet into each 4 stitches around. So you're just going to repeat that 4 stitches all the way around 4 times. And 1, again, because this is so tight, I'm not using a stitch marker, and I do have to count. 2, 3, 4. Honestly, that first round right off after doing that foundation ring is probably the hardest. The rest should go pretty smoothly. So that's 1 repeat. Now we got 3 more rounds to do. If I can get my hook into the hole. There we go. I said it is very tight. You might need to play with it. Just make sure that your hook is coming up through the center and you're not snagging on any of the stitches on the opposite side. So we've got 1, come on, 'Or just give me all the problems right at the end. I think I did exactly what I told you not to do and snagged a stitch on the other side. Let's try that again. So I undid 1 stitch. My tail is in my way. I'll try again. There we go. One. 2. 3. 4. Okay, and this tail is 100% in my way, so we're gonna cut that down now that that's pretty secure in there. We got 2 more rounds of 4 single crochets. So one more. One. Two. Three. And come on. 4. Go ahead and finish off your antenna, same way we've been doing everything else. Slip stitch, if it'll let you. And then yarn over and pull up a tail for sewing. Now from here, we get to put our little robot dude together. So we've got our head, 1, 2 arms, 1, 2 legs, and his antenna. I'm gonna do his antenna first because that's simply what's in my hand currently. And it's pretty easy. So right pretty much at the center top of his head, you're just going to attach his antenna. Now I personally try to keep it as center as possible. Now we are only sewing into 4 stitches around the antenna, but you should be able to get it centered around that opening on the, not opening, but the center stitch on the top of his head. So I usually go directly into the top of the head, and then I come out through the inside of his antenna through the next open stitch. And then I go back into the same stitch on the body, and I come around almost evenly on the opposite side. Basically, you want to think like the 4 corners when it comes to his antenna, at least. So I'm gonna pull through. Now again into the next open stitch on his antenna, we're going to insert our needle and pull that through. Going back into the same spot on the top of the head, we're gonna go to the next corner and pull that through, and you can see that this is lining up like pretty nicely, like almost centered as we're probably gonna get it. Again into the next open stitch on his antenna, back into his head, and in the last corner we're gonna get that last stitch of his antenna and we're gonna go right back through the top of his head and just kind of come out the stitch like right next to it. Doesn't need to be anything crazy. Pull nice and tight, and there we go. He's got his antenna, and it's pretty centered, looking pretty good to me. Now what you're gonna do is just find an easy stitch that you can loop through to tie a knot. Pull that knot nice and tight, and then just like weaving in the tail for when we finished the head, just go ahead, pull that yarn through out the back somewhere and do a couple little loop-de-doos until you feel like you're pretty secure and you're comfortable snipping off that end. Boop. We're going to take one of his arms, and being he is so little, you don't really need to be super crazy with how you attach his arms. Like I said, man, I got fuzzies everywhere. Like I said, I did bring my yarn tail out through the side. So judge where you want his arms to sit. You can put them a little forward, a little back. I kind of just like them on the side of it. And I'm going to get a rough idea. Because he's so little, I don't really use pins to hold this in place. You can kind of generally get the idea. but I'm gonna, so we've got his eyes here, so roughly about there. So I'm gonna insert my needle into his body and out the next stitch. So just into one and out the other. I'm gonna pull his arm up. Move these out of the way. Now into his arm, I'm gonna insert into where we have that yarn tail coming out and then pull it out through the next stitch in that same spot. And then on his body, I'm gonna go back in again to that same stitch that we came out of, loop it around and come out back through the next stitch on his body. I'm gonna pull it nice and tight and snug. You can see we've got a cute little arm. And for good measure, I'm just gonna go into his arm one more time, out the front. Now what I'm gonna do here is I'm actually going to put my needle in through his body and come back out where we initially started with our attachment process of his arm. Give it a nice good pull, solid. His arm is attached. Again, like everything else, find a easy enough loop to pull your yarn through and give yourself the chance to make a knot. Pull that knot nice and tight, and just like the other ones, weave in that yarn tail into your body, into your head, whichever way you want to do it that you feel comfortable. So I'm gonna loop it through like so. And we're gonna snip this yarn tail. And go ahead and do the same thing for your other arm on the opposite side of his body. Now, you can choose how you want to attach your legs. I personally like making my robots in this cute little sitting position. There's a bigger one. Like, I like the little sitting position, but if you so choose, you can attach his legs in a standing position if you would like. So you can attach them down here if you want to, or like I do, you can have them sitting down. I'm gonna attach them this way, but for here, that is entirely up to you. Now, what I like to do, because there is only 4 stitches around and it's such a small area, is I'm actually gonna take my needle and I'm gonna go through 2 sets of stitches. So the front and the back, I'm gonna go through and I'm gonna kind of pull this together. And then I'm gonna come back through, I'm gonna weave back through the other 2 sets of stitches that we didn't work into, and I'll pull that back together. So it kind of gives this leg a nice flat closed look. And now I'm going to take this and I'm kind of gonna offset my legs a little bit. I don't want them like straight forward, but I'm going to attach my legs at this nice ridge area that we made using that rear 3rd loop. So it'll give our legs a nice flat area to sit against our body. And you shouldn't really need any more than like 2 or 3 stitches because the leg is not that big. Oop, oh no, I twisted. What did I do? Uh-oh. There we go. Got my leg all confused. There we go. I'm gonna do one more just to make this nice and even. And now I actually have a perfect loop right here on the end, so I'm actually gonna knot this off right here. I wanna make sure that this is nice and tight and secure. And now I'm gonna put my knot in there. And I'm gonna weave in this tail. And honestly, there is no rhyme or reason to how I do this weaving. I just loop it around and pull. And so we've got one leg. Now he just needs his last little leg. So go ahead and do the exact same thing that you did for the first one with the second one. And then I've just got one more thing to show you, and our little robot dudes are done. All right, so there we go. We've got our little robot dude. He's basically just about finished. From here, you can decide. It's up to you. It is written in the pattern. I kind of think he's cute without a little mouth, but you can embroider a cute little mouth, just a simple piece of scrap black yarn, honestly, to give him a little smile if you would like to. If not, you can leave him blank just like this as well. But if you don't like the gap in his eyes like this, like if you use the 18mm like I did, but you prefer, you kind of like the goofier look of these being closer together, what you can do, just a little tippy tricky thing, is you can take a strand, just a small strand of the color yarn that you were using and your darning needle, and you can kind of sculpt his face a little bit. If you want to, instead of it being like this gap here, you can actually bring them together a little bit to give it more of a cuter, realistic looking head. So to do that, and I do this with a lot of my projects, like you can see it here on Dottie, her eyes are kind of pulled inwards. It gives more of like a bridged nose kind of look. So to do that here, you are just going to insert your hook as close to your safety eye as it will allow you. I know the backing does kind of get in the way. And you're just going to insert on one by one eye, and you're going to go straight across, coming out in the most identical spot as you can possibly get on the opposite eye. And you're going to pull your yarn all the way through. Make sure you leave a decent tail so you have something to knot off and weave in when you're done. And now from here on this side, you're going to come down. This is really a preference, but you can play with it and figure out what you like. I'm gonna come down here, and again, as close to my safety eye as it will allow me to get. I'm going to do the same, come back on the opposite side, same spot, keep it as identical as you possibly can. And I'm gonna pull that yarn through. Now, what you are going to do from here is, you can see there's these weird lines. I want you I like to kind of pinch it myself first to have a little bit of control, but you're gonna pull that together. So I like to pinch it just so I can kind of get a general idea. You can already see how that kind of pulls it in and puckers it. So what you're going to do here, at least this is what I do. This is the fastest, simplest way to go about this. There are better methods, but this is just, like I said, this is how I do it. But basically you're just gonna tie a knot, or start tying a knot, and just slowly tighten that down to where you're comfortable, or if it's not allowing you to tighten it anymore. But you can already see by that little bit of sculpting, it really brings this guy to life just that tiny bit more. Now, once you've reached a point where you're comfortable, you think it's not going anywhere anymore, go ahead and finish tying off your knot. Try and keep that as tight and taut as possible. You don't want that loosening on you at all while you're trying to tie this knot. And there you go. It's nice and like your knot is there. So from here, all you got to do is weave in these ends. Make sure you're not pulling too hard. You want to make anything all wonky or anything up here. But that is pretty secure. So we're going to cut this tail off and we're going to weave in the other one. So going around those safety eyes is a bit tight. So we're going to pull it nice and tight. I'm going to try and loop it one more time. This tail is a little bit short, but we're going to try. I'm going to come, we'll go up here and loop it down this way. There we go. That works. That works. And we will snip that end. And here he is. We have finished our little robot pal. Look how cute he is. Honestly, I'm kind of really liking him without the smile. Like, his eyes just say it all. I'm gonna try, I don't know if you guys can see. Nope, lighting is just not there for me today. I was trying to show you guys his little peekaboo decals, but there you go. You have finished your first C3 Fiber Arts crochet along tutorial. It's amazing. He's so cute. Like I said, you don't have to do it with the regular, acrylic 4-weight yarn. You can double strand it with some acrylic and Bernat velvet. And of course, you can even go bigger and work with blanket yarn like this dude here, which, if you missed it at the beginning, you can make this robot cartoon character, but you do need to purchase the actual downloadable PDF full written version of my alien robot pattern to get the instructions to modify this into this. But beyond that, I hope you guys had fun. If you do make your own robots, please, I want to see them. Make sure whatever socials that you are using, you're tagging C3 Fiber Arts and use hashtag C3 taught me. I like, honestly, if you guys really loved this guy as much as I do, I want to see your makes. So please share them with me. I would love to see them. But beyond that, I'm gonna go work on some other things, and I will catch you and your robots in the next one. Toodles!